Hello, my friends. Hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to look at a video. It's a conversation between Lecrae and Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell, the pastor of 2819. And we're going to see what things he has to say. There's one particular part that I want to discuss and kind of think through with you. And then I'll give you a review of what I think about this conversation and just in general what has been on my mind about Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell. So let's dive in and see what's going on.
Some people may say it's self-righteous to say that these pastors are doing it wrong, because what it implies is that you're the only one doing it right.
Yeah.
How would you address that?
Yeah,
So just in case you've never listened to Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell, he's a very passionate, I would even argue a very emotional preacher as well, but not an emotional preacher in the wrong sense. When I think of his emotion, I think of John the Baptist. I think he's very expressive. I think he wears his convictions on his sleeve, if you will, and to the point where he has to express himself in such a demonstrative way. And I'm very, very excited by what I see. I like it. I think there's a certain passion that is needed for those who have the personality to do it. For instance, I'm not that big, I'm not that expressive, right? So for me to do something that you might see in a Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell will come across as a bit counterfeit and shallow, and it may seem even ingenuous. But when you're a person that has that sort of personality, it's kind of electric. It's very appealing, and it's very convincing. And so, I'm pretty thankful for that aspect of his ministry. But let's see what else he has to say about this, because what Lecrae is digging into here is the fact that he sometimes is very critical of pastors, particularly those who lean towards the prosperity preaching and the sort of gimmicky type things that are so typical in America. And what I love about what Pastor Mitchell does often is he calls those things out. And for a millennial and a Gen Z crowd, that is so important, so necessary. And a person that has his sort of demeanor, you typically don't see that kind of convictional preaching. And so this is a very important aspect of his ministry, and I'm appreciative of the fact that this is something that's represented in a church that is attracting millennials and Gen Zs. But let's see what his response is to that question.
First things first, a lot of the things I say about errors in pastoral ministry, I implicate my own self. First things first. If anybody will be honest before you critique me and judge me and listen to my preaching, don't just listen to a clip. Go watch a sermon or two. You will hear me implicating my own self. I talk about my own sin, my own struggles, my own failures. I air my own laundry from the pulpit. I don't shy away from that. I do that on purpose. I tell people, don't make me an idol. And I'm the first one to talk about my own brokenness from the pulpit, so that people do not think that my preaching is from a place of self-righteousness. My preaching is more from a place of brokenness.
So there's something I thought was very interesting. We'll come back to this point and why this is very important. He said he's very quick and very careful to air his own laundry, right? Meaning he doesn't try to make himself this very righteous and super saint in any way, form, or fashion. I mean, he's very clear about his own struggles. He's transparent about that. And there's something he said there that I thought was very interesting. It's so important, and it's one of the reasons why, to be quite honest, I've been praying about Philip Anthony Mitchell, about Preston Perry, Jackie Hill Perry, individuals who are very in touch with the cultural, fashionable, just the bridge between intersection between Christianity and the culture. Individuals who are very, very in touch with that and very relatable. I mean, people seem to get them, right? And I've been praying about how great that is, but then also how dangerous that is, because what can happen is we can, as Christians, in our zeal and our passion and our conviction and our desire to want to be a part of something that is both authentic but also relevant, we tend to make idols out of personalities, unintentionally and even sometimes intentionally. But I just want to err on the side of innocence here. It's just very unintentional. And what I love about what he's saying, at least in this clip, is that I don't want people to do that. I don't want people to make an idol out of me. I want to be the person that points people to Jesus. I want people to understand that I'm just as broken as they are, so they don't need to put me on a pedestal. But the reality is when you're in the limelight, when you are a part of the culture, when you are a personality, whenever you do have this demeanor, and when you are charismatic, that tends to happen even against your will. And so I love that he's taking the effort to do that, but I often in my mind I pray that we somehow can avoid that. And really, perhaps it's more the responsibility of us or individuals, or I should say people who follow certain personalities, certain individuals, to not put them on a pedestal, but rather to celebrate the Christ that's in the person that's doing the work. And so I love that he's saying that in this particular text. Well, or in this particular interview. Let's see what else he has to say.
That's number one. I implicate my own self. Number two, there are things I say about errors in pastoral ministry, and I also say I've made the same mistakes. And my preaching sometimes is misinterpreted for talking down to pastors. It's not me talking down to pastors. My heart cried, dang, boy, I'm about to cry.
You good, man.
All right, so you see, man, he's moved by this. Very passionate. This is very typical. If you've ever seen a sermon with Pastor Philip Mitchell, you know he's very expressive. He doesn't mind crying. Oftentimes real tears, right? Sometimes people cry and then ain't nothing happening, but you can sometimes see the real tears coming out, and this is an obvious burden for him. And I think that's so good and so necessary for preachers in this time we're in, where so many things are happening that are not even real, not true, not authentic. He's speaking from a place not of just observation, but a place from where he's been, and he's seeing that part of, I guess, his ministry that he's kind of ashamed of and wish he, may not have been, been involved in, and he's seen that in other people, and he's trying his best to, if you will, preach that out of them, or preach them out of that. And so, maybe there's a little more to it. Let's see what he says.
You good, fam?
My bad, bro.
You good, fam? Don't apologize.
My heart, bro, is not to talk down to them, bro. My heart is to pull them out of the foolishness that I felt like I spent 10 years doing, bro. 2019 it will be 2 years old. 2019 was founded on January 2023. In January, we'll be 2 years old, bro. It's only in the last 2 years what God has wrung out of me, bro.
So that's very good. All right. So if you go back and look at Philip Anthony Mitchell's the Church 2819, the videos, you can see that they've been around for a long time, right? So the brand, the church name 2819 is relatively new. And what he's saying here is that he has had his time of preaching and ministering and leading people in a way that has been harmful, not completely true to biblical examples, and he's very repentant of that, right? And as a person that's pastored for 10 years, over 10 years now, it's been several years, 11 years now, in uniquely different contexts, right? I understand what he's saying there, because whenever you're a pastor, all you want to do is be successful. And oftentimes the success that you imagine is uniquely different from the sort of success that you read of in Scripture. If you read in Scripture, success is simply pointing people to Jesus, whether that's one person, two people, a million people, it doesn't matter. The whole idea is to help people understand this message about Jesus so that they can experience him authentically, and then also come into a biblical relationship with the Father. That's ultimately it. But when you're in an American society, and when you're in an American church, or even this sort of idea of American Christianity, success is basically how many people you can get in the room, how much money you can raise, how big can you grow your church, or how big can your church building be, how great can your worship ministry be. All these things. And listen, man, listen. If you were to catch Philip Anthony Mitchell's church, he has all these things going. Like, quite literally, he has all these things going. And so, even in this pure intention to just simply be the man that God wants him to be from a biblical perspective, there's still always these things that we are so used to as Americans that push us to the things that we despise, even in all of our authenticity. To have them present, to have them a part of what we do, right? And so, as a pastor, you wrestle, right? You wrestle with what you know you must be doing authentically and what you know should be done and has to be done in order to get people to even pay attention. And so I think that's where he is right there. I think that's what he's speaking to. I think that's the reason for the emotion, maybe. Um, I get it. I understand.
All of the vanity, all of the foolishness that was in my heart, all of the things I was praying for that was materialistic and fleshly. All of the conferences I kept going to that's making me salivate to have. I want to be a mega church pastor. I want to have thousands of people. I want to have a big Instagram following. I want to have all these things I kept doing. And people don't realize it's so undercover. You go into these conferences, you go to all these things, and you don't even realize you leave with all of these desires that are actually very worldly and materialistic. I have never in 10 years of pastoral ministry before 2019 was founded, ever been to a conference when they're talking about purity.
All right, so this is a good point. So, we listen, that's such a good point. So, any scroll down social media and you'll see these supposed successful pastors offering these opportunities for you to grow your church, right? And they'll put things out like, "Hey, listen, um, I'm only going to leave this up for a couple of couple of days. This is your one chance to get this amazing package at a discount, right? In the next 48 hours." Or they might say, "Hey, listen, I grew my church from nothing to all of these things, and I can teach you all the strategies for you to do the same exact thing in your congregation." I literally have like a little advertisement that comes up that you can double your membership in 90 days, things like that, right? And as a person that has been to conferences and helped actually put on leadership conferences, as a person who has studied leadership theory, oftentimes whenever we hear these kinds of pitches, it has nothing to do with what the Bible defines as a successful church. It has nothing to do with building that. It has everything to do with meeting the standards and the metrics that are set by Americanized ideas and concepts of a successful Christian church. Right? So what we do is we go to these churches, and he is so good. I never heard it explained this way, but it's so true. We fill our hearts with vanity and try to go back to our churches and live out that vanity rather than teaching Christ and focusing on discipleship and helping people grow in their spiritual formation, helping people grow closer in their relationship with Jesus Christ and other people in the most genuine and authentic way. Rather, we have our own goals and our own ambition and our own vision, our own dream, and we live it out. And I can tell you this, brothers and sisters, I've seen people literally drive themselves to misery trying to live out those things they learned at certain conferences, or what they see on TV from their favorite preacher, or their idol, or their favorite leader, or their most successful pastor, whatever that looks like. Literally drives them crazy because they never can attain or meet the standard that they set for themselves that has been birthed by either watching their favorite tele-evangelists online or by going to the kind of conferences that he's speaking of here. And so when he talks about a conference that focuses on purity, man, that's beautiful. I think maybe there's a conference that I watched online by a pastor in Africa. I can't remember his name, but that was probably the first time I heard a mega church pastor challenge leaders at a conference about motive, purity, sanctification, doing things with the right motive, with the right purpose, with the right heart. In fact, he discouraged trying to be the mega church pastor, right? Or the successful leader as we might understand it. So Philip Anthony Mitchell is wrestling with something here, and he's trying to help others because he's been in a place that he doesn't want to see anyone else arrive at. All right, so let's see what else he has to say.
And they was talking about wringing out your heart from sin. When they was talking about how you get down in private, or the congruence between what you preach on a platform and how you live and nobody don't see. I ain't never in 10 years been to a conference that talk like that. You know what I'm saying? I know this to keep going in and out of these rooms and coming out insecure, jealous, covetous, and my heart full of materialism, bro. So when I talk like this, if somebody gonna listen to me talk and say he's self-righteous, then if that's their perspective of me, I can't change that. I'm just saying right here on this podcast, right here on the deep end, B, that's not my heart. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like I would say to this camera, anybody watching, that's not my heart. My heart is, I know the pain of a decade of pastoring with vanity in my heart and praying things that was vain. Even when I thought I was doing it right, not realizing looking back, that was vain. And what I'm trying to do by talking like that is call out error, because we should, and do my best to help other pastors to see that we need to come out of all of that mess. You see what I'm saying? We need to come out of that so we can be the shepherds that Jesus can trust with his flock. I feel like, why can't we hear the Spirit of God beckoning to the shepherds in America? You know what I'm saying? Y'all are the ones leading my people astray. We. Like, I get frustrated with people that's always pointing at the devil and blaming the devil for all the mess in the church. Does the devil have inroads in the church? Yes. But Craig, the greatest threat to the American church is the American pulpit, B.
Oh, wow. Man, that's good. I love, and listen, he's absolutely right about that, because there's a whole bunch of junk going on there that doesn't help us and doesn't put us in a place where we can actually uh, grow in the way that Christ wants us to grow. So, man, that was a that was a pretty true statement that he made there. I think that was spot on. All right, but let's see what else.
It's not, like we were just talking about, the gates of hell is not going to prevail.
That's right.
It's the American pulpit. It's us, B.
Yeah.
I said this in the beginning of this year. Woo. It's us, me. It's Philip Anthony Mitchell and all of the pastors. It's our preaching. It's all of our materialistic, our secular humanistic doctrines, our prosperity, all this stuff that is leading people's hearts astray. We are the ones that's hurting God's sheep, not the devil. We are, B.
Yeah.
So if somebody calls me self-righteous, I won't defend myself. I would say, go listen to my preaching. Don't call me that from a clip, bro.
Yeah.
Go listen to the body of my work.
Yeah.
And see, do you hear a man that's self-righteous, or do you hear a man that is broken? Do you hear a man that has made a ton of mistakes? And do you hear a man that is beckoning to a country, to the American church? We got to come out of this nonsense. That's not me saying I'm better than every other pastor. This is me saying my brothers. You see what I'm saying? All of my brothers, all of my sisters who are proclaimers of the gospel, yo.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the scriptures? Can we go back to what Jesus told us? Can we go back to the Great Commission? Can we go back to fidelity to the word? Can we go back to exegesis and not eisegesis? And can we stop blaming the devil? And can we take ownership for our own mess? Bro, have you now? I'm speaking for me.
Yeah.
How many conferences have you been to when they're talking about the purity of the heart, wringing out sin, congruence between what you do on the platform with, like, you don't go to conferences and hear about that, B. Not a whole lot.
Especially not within the black community.
Not in our context. You don't hear that, bro.
Especially not in
You
the
always
black
hear 8 steps 2.
Yeah.
5 steps 2.
Yeah.
This metric 4. But we don't hear
Bookstore
about
is
stuff
less
like,
about God, more
Yeah.
about centering self.
you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So can I say this right here on the podcast? Yo, if anybody's watching this podcast and you have been offended at my preaching, if you're a pastor and you're watching this and you have been offended at my preaching, if I've come off as self-righteous and pharisaical, and if I've hurt you, listen, I apologize. Is this my camera?
Yeah.
I apologize to you. I can own that. If my tone has made you misinterpret my heart, I apologize. I can own that. Hear me. I'm saying it right here on the deep end. It is not my heart to be self-righteous. And when I am self-righteous, trust me, I'm wringing that out in my prayer time. When I do feel myself a little bit, I'm going to go wring that out in my prayer time.
All right, so listen, this seems to be there seems to be an element of authenticity and just a genuine heart trying his best, to help people. That's what it seems like to me. Here's what I worry about, and this is what I think we as a church can do to help individuals like Philip Anthony Mitchell, who obviously has an incredible way of communicating to people that draws people, similar to what you would see in a John the Baptist. I use him because, of the way he's conveyed in Scripture. He had this um, unorthodox, um, abnormal way of communicating. He was not your, typical Pharisee or scribe or high priest or anything like that. That was, you know, um, familiar with the ways of the tabernacle, or excuse me, the temple. He was this guy that would be out in the wilderness, just basically going for it, right? He was just this. He's actually described as what I would call a wild man. And the reason I say that is because he was rough around the edges. I think the Bible intends to paint him that way. But one of the things about John the Baptist is he was able to consistently remind the people that he isn't and he was not it. When people was looking for him to be like the Messiah, he was very quick and had this abnormal ability to keep people off of him enough to focus their attention on Jesus. He was incredible at that because he understood that his way was to prepare his purpose rather was to prepare the way for the Lord. It was not about him. It was not about his ability to attract people or bring people to himself. He had one job. That's to point people to Jesus. I think we live in a time where people have that desire, but as I was reading about Saul, oftentimes people start one way and they end another. Philip Anthony Mitchell actually mentioned this in this in this interview about his only desire is to finish well, to finish strong, to finish with a good reputation, if you will, of sharing the gospel and doing what God told him to do. Everyone, I hope, has that intention, but we sometimes don't help them in that endeavor to do just that. I think we can do them a favor. And I want to read Acts chapter 14, verse 8 through verse 20 to help us put in mind what this looks like and how we can help in this endeavor. Um, Paul and Barnabas are in Lystra, and they heal a crippled man um, who had issues with his feet. He had never walked before from his birth. And the text shows us that Paul told him in verse 10 to stand up. So the man stands up and he starts walking. Well, of course, the crowd is absolutely blown away by what they see. And what they begin to say in this particular time is that these men are gods. Now, notice the point that is brought up in this passage. They consider Paul and Barnabas to be gods because of the miracle that they worked. And they considered Barnabas to be the Greek god Zeus, and they considered Paul to be Hermes. Okay? So they prescribe deification to these men just by nature of what they did in bringing this man healing, which they have never seen the likes of before. So you have this temple over there, and they're applying to Paul and Barnabas this sort of divine nature. Now, what I love about what happens in this text is what Paul says in response to these claims from these individuals. And it's so different from what we might see in America, because even though we don't say things like, oh, yeah, I am a God, or yeah, I am special, we kind of act that way. We kind of welcome it. In fact, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. Our flesh, it wants it, right? It craves it. Our spirit might say, our spiritual man might say, oh man, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be idolized. But I'm going to tell you who does want that. Our flesh wants it. And if we are not careful to maintain our flesh, even the most intentional and even the most pure men and women will accept the sort of accolades that will allow people to make them a Zeus or Hermes in order for them to feel good about what they're doing in a very noble way. And what I love about this text is that whenever this was happening in verse 15, Paul looks at them and says, friends, why are you doing this? We are mere human beings. We're just like you. And the only reason we have come to you is to bring the good news that you should turn from these sort of things and turn to the living God. But notice what happens in verse 18. In verse 18, it shows us that even when they were saying these things to them, Paul and Barnabas could not hardly restrain the people from sacrificing to them. So here's the thing that I'm saying here, which is why I pray for Philip Anthony Mitchell and people who have his influence and his ability to connect with people. When a person says, I don't want you to idolize me, that's simply not enough, because what can happen, even with you saying that and trying your best not to do it, people still can sacrifice to you. They still will idolize you, even when you say don't do it. And I think the point here is what we can do in an attempt to help people like Philip Anthony Mitchell and the other personalities who are influential and appealing to us, and we are deeply inspired and moved by them. When they say to us, we don't want to be idolized, it would be in our best interest and in theirs to stop sacrificing to them so that we won't become a snare to them as they desire and as they pursue the will of God. Because I can tell you, no matter how much a person says, don't worship me, if we continue to do it, even with the intention of not being worshiped, it becomes very difficult to resist those kinds of things. And we become a stumbling block to those who have very pure motives and very pure hearts. And we can perhaps cause a person to fall away because of our lack of awareness of what is actually happening and what we are supposed to be benefiting from as they are used by God. So I want to encourage us to all pray for Philip Anthony Mitchell, people with his influence, any pastor, any leader, any person that has the ability to touch people and lead them and influence. We should be praying for them, and we should pray for ourselves that we don't fall into the trap of idolizing those whom God is trying to use to show us a clear version or a clear view of who he really is. We should pray that our hearts will be clear, and the hearts of those who lead are clear and upright as well. All right, so friends, let's keep on studying, let's keep reading, let's keep living for Christ. I believe it'll all pay off in the end. Until next time, take care, God bless, and thank you for watching.